Coming up on Theater Talk.
The trick to spontaneity is to having the idea or the thought occur to you. And if it's your own idea, it's often too labored, and someone else's idea is refreshing.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
Listen, you've been giving me the willies the way you walk down the street. I mean it.
Why?
Now, Catherine, I don't want to be a pest, but I'm telling you, you're walking wavy.
I'm walking wavy?
Now, don't aggravate me, Katie. You're walking wavy. I don't like the looks they give you in the candy store.
From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
And I'm the show's producer, Susan Haskins.
Well, the first hit of the new year on Broadway is an absolutely superb production of Arthur Miller's A View from the Bridge. It was directed by Gregory Mosher, who I'm delighted to say is back on Broadway in terrific form. Greg, we've missed you all these years. As the Wall Street Journal said, where have you been in the last 4 or 5 years?
Oh, for the last 5 years, I've been at Columbia University developing a program for the president, Lee Bollinger, who asked a very provocative question: could you make the arts a part of every Columbian's life, the biologists and the historians and the physicists? And I said I had no idea, but I'd be delighted to try.
I guess that's an okay excuse for staying away from Broadway, but I'm very happy that you're back now with View from the Bridge. And it is a superb production, not the least because of the lead actor, Liev Schreiber, playing Eddie Carboni. It's just yet another one of these amazing stage performances that you seem to give us on a regular basis. Congratulations, and welcome back to Theater Talk.
Thank you.
All right, Greg, what is it that prompted you to go back to this play, to revive A View from the Bridge?
You know, it's not a science. It's just hunches, don't you think? It's a hunch what you want to do, and I knew that the Arts Initiative was in good enough shape that I could
At
do
Columbia.
it at Columbia, that I could do it for a few months part-time, and literally in the middle of the night, I thought, I think it should be A View from the Bridge if we can cast it.
And when did you hit on Liev?
Spring, summer, early. It was warm when we had that first
Certainly
lunch.
warmer than it is now, yeah.
Is it a part, Liev, that you had ever thought you'd like to play Eddie Carboni, ever sort of in your mind?
Never occurred to me.
Why?
Physically, I didn't think that I had what it took to play Eddie. I had also seen a wonderful production with a very good friend of mine, Anthony LaPaglia, about 11 years earlier. And
Yeah, good production.
yeah, great production. I thought it was maybe a little soon, and on top of that, I'd never really been very drawn to this particular period of American naturalism, or naturalism in general. I think I'm drawn to plays that have a little bit more of a built-in safety net, the formal language of the Shakespeares, Pinters, the Mammoths.
Yeah.
I think Bogosian was talk radio was me straying away from that a little bit, and it felt challenging and interesting. And so when Greg first came to me with the play, I really thought, no, this is not for me. But then I went home and read it, and it was kind of undeniable that it's one of those parts that if you get the opportunity to play, you really should.
Did you have to convince him in any way to sort of go down this more kind of naturalistic style of plays that you might not be attracted to when you were enticing him?
No, I don't think I tried to convince you. Did I?
You know, he was really pathetic.
And remained pathetic.
But it was very intelligent. You know, he said all of those right things. You know, he said, well, you know, I said, why this play? Why now? And he said, I couldn't tell you, sort of the way he answered your last question. It's just a hunch, you know. What I think you should do is you should find the best writing that you can, and then find the best actors that you can, and put them together in the same room, which is, you know, how can you resist a comment like that? And so I said, okay, I'm going to go home and read this and see what he's so excited about.
It's interesting that this play was initially written in blank verse, and a great deal of Arthur Miller originally wrote a one-act version of the play, totally in blank verse, and he carried that a lot over to the two-act version. So some of it really reads like poetry, a lot of your dialogue.
That's the
Yeah,
first thing that
yeah.
occurred to me when I read it, as I thought, in terms of American naturalism, this is remarkably formal in structure.
It's great. It's based on the great tragedy.
Great tragedy, and that's sort of what's so compelling about playing it as an actor, is that trajectory. It's like being shot out of a cannon, and it's a very, very lean play. It really only runs about an hour and 45 minutes, but you feel like you have the content of a 3-hour epic. It's very full.
Yeah.
There's no fat on it. And like Shakespeare's plays, there isn't a scene that doesn't move the momentum of the play forward. And that was my first instinct, was when I read it, was I thought, oh, this is familiar territory.
What I like so much about the play is there's not a scene that doesn't move the story forward, but there's not a scene where there's not underlying tension with everything that people are saying. I mean, they're saying one thing, but they really mean something else. You just get that sense that underneath it all is just a smoldering fire about to just burst out.
Well, as Alfieri says in the opening, we're going to watch it run its bloody course.
Yeah,
That's 3 minutes into the play.
yeah, yeah.
This one's name was Eddie Carbone. and you're off and rolling.
Yeah. You can you give us a little context on the play when Miller wrote this play? What was going on in his life? Because it's one of the plays where there's a lot of autobiographical stuff in it, I think.
Well, there are two main contexts. One is, of course, everything that was going on with the House Un-American Activities Committee and people testifying. Kazan testifies in 52. Miller writes Crucible in 53, where the guy says, more weight, you cannot get me to talk. Kazan comes back with On the Waterfront in 54.
Justifying the stool pigeon.
Terry Malloy says, I'm glad what I done, and Kazan's very open about that, reflects his feeling about his HUAC testimony. And then Miller does this remarkable thing in 55, which is rather than taking another swipe at Kazan, he takes a guy who informs, in this case, calls the Immigration Bureau, and extends profound compassion towards that person. There's no blame in Eddie, towards Eddie, and that's a remarkable thing. The other context is that Miller was secretly having an affair with Marilyn Monroe.
He was married at the time, and he was running
married
around with Marilyn
to a
Monroe.
woman with
Mary
whom
Miller.
with whom he was
Very good.
very close. But the marriage was ending. He had met Marilyn Monroe on the West Coast, and there
Through Kazan.
through Kazan.
That's very
right,
interesting.
yeah.
Little-
And there they were, carrying on this secret affair, this older man and younger woman. And I think we all feel that's reflected in the play.
And then in the play, Eddie Carbone falls in love with his niece. That is the tragic flaw, right? I mean, he is in the grip of something that perhaps he can't even admit to himself, that he's in love with this girl who's living under the same roof as he is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think his tragic flaw, if I had to name it, which I'm sort of loath to do before I'm done with it,
Give us a hint.
but I think it has something to do with not being in touch with himself,
Yeah.
not being available to himself. He's available to others. As Alfieri says, he allows himself to be known, but he doesn't allow himself to know himself.
It's a sort of a constant characteristic of tragic heroes in classic drama, that they're not getting they feel that they're not getting their due. They feel that they're not getting the kind of respect they deserve. And suddenly you find this with Eddie, that he blindly is within the family. He doesn't understand why people aren't listening to what he wants, yet what he wants is so destructive. And it says he speaks to the blind spot.
I think part of that for me is Miller's debunking of the patriarchal myth. And that what Eddie hangs onto with such tenacity is the life that worked.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
The head of his
Yeah.
household, the little triumvirate, his kingdom that worked so well and made him so happy. And that now as this woman grows up and moves out of his house, it threatens his kingdom.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
And that as he loses that, he wants it back. He wants it back so desperately that I think it even transcends the whole sexual attraction to her, that was his world. He was a man of respect in his own home, and now his home is coming apart.
Did you study that essay by Miller? I'm sure you did, about the tragedy and the common man, where he's talking about that he feels that what you're saying, that Well, the issues of the common man in the modern era are analogous to the issues of the kings and queens
Oh, right.
of classic drama, and that they're, as you say, the little kingdom can be some guy's crummy apartment
He
in
certainly
Brooklyn.
writes it that way. I don't think there's any coincidence that in, I can't remember which scene numbered, I think it's scene 9, that in our production the turntable turns, and Miller writes very specifically in the stage direction that Eddie is rocking in his lazy boy chair. And the imagery of a throne and a soon-to-be deposed king is pretty vivid.
Yeah, but once that passion for the niece, played by Scarlett Johansson, comes into his life, the house can never be put back again, despite his wife, played brilliantly by Jessica Hecht,
Yes.
trying. I think she thinks, if I can get this girl out of the house, it can go back to the way it was.
I told him the same thing already.
What?
That he should let you go. But see, if only I tell him, he thinks I'm just fooling him out. Or maybe I'm just jealous of something, you know.
He said you was jealous?
But the sadness of it all is it can never go back to the way it was.
No, the essence of a tragedy is that the more you, structurally, is the more you try to fix the problem, the worse jam you're in.
Yeah.
Oedipus, Eddie Carbone, is trying to figure out why there's a curse on Thebes. And he discovers that he's the curse on Thebes. And as all these characters try to resolve the situation, they destroy it. And that's built into the structure of the play.
But at least they say that Oedipus at the end of it said, "Oh wow, I was sleeping with my mother." But the Eddie Carbone, does he ever come to the realization of what he's done to create his own undoing? What do you think, Liev?
The jury's out. It's set that honestly is something that I'd like to leave to the audiences.
Very interesting.
That's something that I'd like to leave.
Have you made the decision?
Yes.
Do you know his decision?
No. I mean, we have not discussed his decision.
Whether he knows.
We've discussed around the topic, but
Yes.
I think it's one of the things that's special about this play. It's really a special concept, and it's something that I would be thrilled to have audiences discuss amongst themselves without having predetermined the answer.
Let me pick up on that. That's something interesting because you're a great director, you're a great actor, and this maybe can give us some insight into how you work. Are there areas with an actor where you let them figure out or decide something for themselves that you do not need to know? Or do you feel that you have to be as inside the actor's mind whose performance you're shaping as you can be?
In this play, there are two areas where they're really driving things. That would be Act 1 and Act 2. What's so weird about this, Michael and Susan, is people are talking about Gregory's production, blah, 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 blah. I have never more in my life depended on the actors through this. And probably, to a point where I caused needless chaos in the rehearsal room.
He's smiling.
No, but I did, and so I said from the first day that I don't have some platonic production in mind that I will teach you or guide you towards or entice out of you or cajole you into. We will try to figure out the play together, to which Liev very sensibly said, in 4 weeks?
Do you like working that way, Liev? Do you like it when he says,
No.
figure? Why?
Because I like being put through my paces. I have a habit of thinking too much, and I think I have too many ideas, and so it often helps me when I'm working to throw my ideas out and follow somebody else's ideas. It's a good trick. It's a good technique for my own ideas to come back to me. My own ideas are always better when they're organic, and they only are organic when they come from someone else's direction. The trick to spontaneity is to having the idea or the thought occur to you. And if it's your own idea, it's often too labored, and someone else's idea is refreshing and new. But I think that I understand now. It took me a long time to understand Greg's technique. And I have a great amount of respect for it. It's very similar, I think, by degrees to my approach to acting, which is that the text is everything, and that all of the answers to all of the questions exist in the text. And there is a certain amount of truth to performance is relative. Anything works with the right amount of commitment and collaboration. Anything works. And if you believe in that, you can take any note or you can take any direction and you can apply it. With a little collaboration and the right energy, you can make something work.
Was there ever a period in this production where you were letting them range around, where you thought, I need to pull this in, or this is not a good idea? How do you say to an actor, interesting choice, but not a good one?
In those words, I think.
Did you have to say this in this particular?
Sure, but I think we discovered it. I mean, there's an extraordinarily difficult scene that lasts probably 8 minutes at the end of the first act, where Eddie has been to Alfieri. He's confessed that the kid is driving him crazy.
So
he's
gone to see the
expressed his
lawyer, yeah.
fear and bitterness that he's about to lose his child, this woman who matters to him so much, and his wife, and as Liev says, his family's going to fall apart. And he's sitting there on his throne reading his newspaper. And we must have done that 47 different ways before we realized the best way was for everyone simply to be as pleasant as they could to Eddie in that scene, and that the tension, which ends in the fisticuffs with Rodolfo, would work. There were times when Marco, the strong brother who lifts the chair, was extraordinarily confrontational with you, and Jessica was very confrontational. And to a certain extent, you have to figure out what feels right. But, you know, Liev talks about my technique. I don't think I've ever directed 2 plays the same way.
Because it's based on the actors that you have. You're going to respond to what they bring.
And where you are in your life and what lessons you learned. And I did let it go too far. I mean, I caused needless pain. And then you try and adjust the next day. And, you know, Liev really, aside from his truly great performances, Eddie deserves an enormous amount of credit for this production. His intelligence, his ideas, his unending generosity towards the guest, his stewarding of Scarlett, as older actors have stewarded younger actors for thousands of years. That's how young actors learn to act.
Yeah.
From older actors, not from graduate programs in the 17th century.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I was going to ask you about that because, I mean, you've got great stage chops, and you've got Scarlett Johansson, a movie star, coming to do a play. I don't think she's done a play since she was a kid, really. She gives a fine performance. How do you did you have to help her along a little bit to bring her up to your dynamic level?
There's a couple of things that I think are remarkable about Scarlett right from the word go. One, I think, has something to do with the context that you were talking about before, about Miller's obsession with Marilyn when he wrote this play, and the sexualizing of a young woman, which I think Scarlett brings so naturally to this character. When you watch an actor go from being a child actor to an adult actor, you notice that Hollywood, there's a certain age at which they have this sort of sexualizing of the person, and Scarlett has been going through that in the past couple of years in a way that I think there's a lot of parallels in this play. But the other thing about Scarlett is she has tremendous composure and calm. I was, flipping out at points in this rehearsal, and actually she was the one that I was looking to for calm and confidence. She has that in spades. I remember the first preview just being blown away by her calm. Having said that, there were things that she's just not familiar with. Simple stage things, simple reaching an audience things that, you would say one thing to her, and the next night you would see her doing it. There was one time in rehearsal, it's a very difficult set, because if you've noticed, the set sort of functions like a vacuum to the upstage point. It's a triangle that goes up, which is very difficult to prevent from upstaging yourself and other people. It's a really hard set to work on.
And on top of that, it twirls.
And it spins. And one of the things I said to her early on in rehearsals was, sometimes when I'm lost or confused on stage, I just think about triangulating. And I explained to her what triangulating was very briefly on the roof while we were waiting to go back down to rehearsal.
Can you explain to us triangulating?
Triangulating means you're basically looking to make triangles on stage to keep the actors open who are speaking, and to
Just a blocking issue.
a simple blocking solution, you know, because Greg didn't really want to sort of block the scenes outright. He wanted to play them and see where they went. And it was, you know, she was getting turned around a lot and thinking that she had to face forward all the time. And I said, you know, I don't always worry about putting my back to the audience. I think your back is an interesting thing. You can act with your back as much as anything else. And when I get lost or confused, I just look to triangulate. If I'm too close, I check the balance of the angles and I adjust. So we go back down, and immediately she had begun to triangulate, which is a fairly sophisticated concept and difficult to do, particularly in terms of how to give focus and take focus. And I just, the speed with which she picked up things was truly, truly remarkable. One more thing I'll say about Scarlett that she said that moved me the most was we were doing an interview very early on in rehearsals, and a journalist said to her, well, what about, or what if you get really, really bad reviews? And Scarlett looked at him for a moment and then said, well, I guess I'll be bummed out, but I think the thing that would hurt me most of all is that they wouldn't let me do it again. And I knew then that we had a real actor on our hands.
I guess with this play, just to come around what you were saying earlier about how you stage this play, the less you do with this play, the more powerful it becomes. Because all that emotional stuff, all that tension is right there in the writing. So as you say, to have Liev sit in that chair in a scene that is one of the most famous confrontational scenes in modern drama, you know, where that explosion happens and Marco lifts the chair, just to have him read the paper. Because it's all, play's going to lead right up to that.
Yeah, sure. You have to sit on everything, I think, always. I mean, it's true in Mammoth, too, don't you think? You start emoting, and but you keep it driving, and you keep it contained, and you keep it in the world of the play, and then it gets emotionally satisfying.
You know, you start emoting, we think, oh, it's acting. Yeah.
Well, I've noticed now I haven't even finished the front page of that newspaper. It finally occurred to me. It actually occurred to me 2 nights ago. I was like, I never get past this front page of this
Well,
paper.
but I'm impressed you're reading.
Well, the thing is that I noticed it. I start reading those front page headlines, and they've made a real paper for me.
Yeah.
And almost immediately something happens that takes my attention. And I try to return to the paper, but it keeps...
But isn't that what Eddie Carboni's going through?
Yeah.
Something's going around. He's trying to read his newspaper, but all the stuff is going around him, and his mind is on the other stuff.
I think what you said, too, about subtext, you didn't use that word, but you said something about all that's going on underneath. I think that, to me, is a little bit of what defines, for me, Greg's choices. When he says that scene, for instance, around the dinner table, plays better for him when everyone's being nice to Eddie, and it's going along smoothly, because I think in his Bergman-esque world, what's underneath the pleasantry is almost more interesting than what's being broadcast through emotionality.
I think that scene is extraordinary because there's a pathetic quality to see them all trying so hard to please this man, and you think it can't be done.
I wanted to ask you what you did when you flipped out.
In the rehearsals?
Yeah.
When I flip out, I get very aggressive. I want to do it again. I want to do it again. I want to do it again. I want to try this. I want to try that. And I get very anxious and tense, and it's productive, but it can be uncomfortable.
Scary.
Greg is much better at going, I'm going to let this play itself out. I have faith in the text. I'm going to let this play itself out. I'm much more aggressive. Which is the truth is I always get to that point where I go, well, next time I don't need to be that anxious. It always works out in one way or another.
I mean, you're going to find the path
You're
to
gonna find something.
solving the problem of the scene or something like that.
And when you pick good plays that have been around for a while, of course you're going to solve. There's a continuum of people having solved this for 40 years.
Right.
Why not be a part of it?
It's a terrific production, A View from the Bridge at the Court Theater, directed by Greg Mosher and starring the great Liev Schreiber. Talk of an extension, possibility of an extension? Are you working on that,
Right
Greg?
now, we're out on
You're a
April
producer.
4th. We're out on April 4th.
If you could extend, would you stay? Good enough part?
We haven't even really had the conversation yet. Of course it's a good enough part. The the problem is surviving it.
Yeah, right.
That's a very good point.
Liev Schreiber, Greg Mosher, thanks for being our guests tonight
Thank you.
on Theater
Thanks
Talk.
for having me.
Pleasure. You can sign up for viewer updates at theatertalk.org.
Or you can Twitter us.
Now look, baby, I can see we're getting mixed up again here.
No, people are gonna see him going in and out. And
Yeah, I don't care who sees him going in and out, as long as you don't see him going in and out. This goes for you too, Beatrice. You don't see nothing and you don't know nothing.
What do you mean? I understand.
You don't understand. You still think you can talk about this to somebody just a little bit. I'm gonna say it once and for all, because you're making me nervous again, the both of you. I don't care if someone comes in the house and sees them sleeping on the floor. It never comes out of your mouth who they are or what they're doing here.
Yeah, but my mother will know.
Sure, she'll know. Just don't you be the one who told her, that's all. It's the United States government you're playing with now. It's the Immigration Bureau. If you said it, you knew it. You didn't say it, you didn't know it.
Yeah, but suppose somebody
I don't
just...
care what the question is. You don't know nothing. They got stool pigeons all over this neighborhood. They're paying them every week for information. You don't know who they are. Could be your best friend, you hear?
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.